good friend of the show, John Wilner Hotline. And John, this is in your world, which is the new Pac-12, the former Pac-12, and the Big 12. This is a busy week with Texas Tech and Utah, and all the things that are going on there. And then, of course, the opening at UCLA. You have been pretty adamant on Twitter about certain things that people need to know, like, hey, they should build an on-campus stadium. Well, the expensive real estate in Bel Air probably prevents them from doing that, given the fact that nobody, people will buy other people's houses because their trees are in the way in that corner of the world. And UCLA decided 20 years ago that football wasn't really their deal. So where does this go at UCLA?
I think that's the big question. They need to decide where it's going to go before they can actually start, creating a list of candidates. UCLA needs to decide. It's a basketball school. They last won a championship in football in 1998. They've had a lot of mediocre seasons and a few pretty good ones. They need to decide how good do they want to be and what's it going to take. Do they want to compete for playoff berths and the Big Ten title? Are they willing to invest at the level that Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, and USC are? Or does UCLA want to be Minnesota, and 7-5, 8-4, go to a middle level poll? I don't think they can go out and hire a coach until they get those things figured out, because the coaches are going to want to know, what's the commitment level from the institution? What's the funding level? What's the NIL game? All those things have to be solved. Is there going to be a general manager? What's the football support staff look like? What is the future of an on-campus facility or not? They got to figure all that out before they can go hire a coach, I think. And it's a complicated issue. The current chancellor's been on the job for 9 months, 8 months. I don't think he's going to be there very long. He's old. The previous chancellor didn't care about football. They've got budget issues that have been well documented. There's a lot there going on there that they got to solve first. And I think that these 2.5 months will be very valuable for them, because they're not going to hire a good candidate unless they can answer those questions.
Are you surprised by how quickly and the timing of how the whole Deshaun Foster era came to an end?
I'm not. I mean, I thought it was a questionable hire from the start, never been a coordinator even. And then, his performance at Big Ten Media Day in Indianapolis in 2024, when he got up there and he was just kind of frozen, that was a real window into the situation. That was a guy who was not ready for the job. Right? There's a lot of great coaches that aren't good with the media, but that was a coach who just wasn't ready for the stage. And I thought that it kind of reflected what we saw on the field over the course of 15 games. That New Mexico, that was arguably the worst loss they've ever had, I would say, in the modern era of UCLA football. They had no choice, I don't think, but to make a change immediately. They were not going to sell a single ticket to another game in which Deshaun Foster was coaching that team. They were not going to raise another dollar. They had to do something. That was it was beyond atrocious.
John, is it kind of peculiar to have a job that is with a name school like UCLA in Los Angeles, which is talent rich and all of that, and it doesn't feel like there is a parade of guys that didn't go to UCLA that would want this job?
So the way I look at it is, in the whole sweep of potential candidates, so head coaches, coordinators, coaches who are kind of maybe out of a job right now, NFL coordinators, of that entire spectrum, I would say the UCLA job is not viewed positively by 60-70% for a lot of reasons. Institutional commitment, living in LA, the cost of living, the lack of support, the off-campus stadium, the difficult path into the CFP through the Big Ten. But then there's about 35% who I think would love that job because they do see what UCLA has to offer. They don't mind living in Southern California. There's a lot of positive aspects. There are so many big-time players within a 2-hour drive of campus. It is the most popular university in the world in terms of admission, applications for admissions. It has a lot to offer. And if you are convinced that the leadership is right, and I mean by that, I mostly mean the chancellor. And Julio Frank was at Miami before he came to UCLA. He helped move Miami forward, hiring Mario Cristobal. If you're convinced that the institution is behind you and you don't mind living in LA, then it's a great job. So, but I don't think a lot of coaches view those things as positives.
John, got 2 big rivalry games that, although they're different, Apple Cup and Civil War. They're much different looking now because of conference realignment. Obviously, Oregon State's off to an atrocious start, and then Wazoo, they start off 2-0, and then they just get crushed by North Texas last weekend. So I have a 2-part question. How much kind of excitement do you feel like there still is that you're feeling out there in that part of the country for these matchups? But also, are we seeing the effects already for Wazoo and Oregon State from maybe a talent perspective already and them not being quite up to snuff? Or maybe is it a coaching situation? Kind of how do you view where those two sit currently?
Well, I think it's both coaching and talent, and those things are interconnected. But I think Oregon State's got a real question as to whether they hired the right guy, Trent Bray, a lot like Deshaun Foster at UCLA, former player, elevated to the position. There's not any indication yet that he's up to the task. Washington State hired Jimmy Rogers from South Dakota State, and it's his first year, 3 games, but I'm not, we'll see. And they both have talent issues. They have money issues, right? Acquiring talent these days costs money, and they don't really have a whole lot of it. So they're in tough. It's tough sledding for both schools, and I think the interest in the rivalries is partly whether the heavyweights are going to cover those big spreads. I mean, Oregon's favored by 35 points, which I think is a record in the Civil War. Wow. Washington is favored by 3 touchdowns in the Apple Cup. And it's a lot of people are just wondering, are they going to be 2 just absolute beatdowns or not?
John, what are your thoughts on Utah as they take on Texas Tech this week? It's a big game for both of them. We've talked about it at length here because of Tech, and they're trying to jump on the scene. But Utah and Kyle Whittingham, this is a big one for them to say, like, hey, it's on now. Like, we've got our guy, and watch out.
It is a big one. It's interesting to me. Neither team has really played anybody. I don't know what to make of either of them. To be honest, I thought I knew what to make of Utah, and then UCLA went ahead and lost to UNLV in New Mexico. And so now I think like Utah's basically played 3 cupcakes, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly Texas Tech hasn't been challenged. So we don't really have a whole lot to go on with either team in terms of how they're going to respond to facing comparative talent, right? I tend to think that this is going to be about Utah's ability to their tackles are really good, right? Maybe the best set of tackles in the country. How are they going to hold up against Texas Tech's pass rush, especially David Bailey? Is Dampier going to have time to throw in the pocket, and is he going to be able to connect from the pocket? I don't think Utah can go down the field 4 or 5 yards at a time, incrementally moving the ball for 60 or 70 yards, possession after possession. I think Utah's got to get chunk yards with Dampier thrown from the pocket, and I'm not sure he can do that. So to me, that's a big question for Utah. Texas Tech, obviously great downfield game, but Utah is going to put pressure on Tech at the line of scrimmage that it has not faced this year. It is a hard place to play, very difficult place to play. But I kind of think it may just come down evenly matched. Teams that haven't been tested, it could come down to special teams. A muff punt, a missed field goal. I think it's going to be really close. That line, to me, is right on the money. Basically, it's an even game except for the home field.
Yeah, I cannot wait. Like you said, there's such little evidence at this point, and this feels like a game we're going to have some real evidence behind it. We're gonna know more about Utah and Texas Tech when this one's wrapped up.
Yeah,
and maybe the rest of the league.
The Texas Tech Utah Oregon State game, Oregon State lost at home to Fresno. That tells us nothing about Tech.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, like a year ago, those of us who stay up late night, watch the After Dark and all of that, John Mateer was like the guy. Yeah. He was like the poster child for it. This year, it feels like it's Jaren Kiabe-Sangapolutele from Cal, who people can easier say JKS out there at Cal. But kind of what little sensation do you feel like he's got going on out there in terms of just his talent, but also kind of the oomph that he's providing to the Cal Golden Bears for those who have seen it or have not seen it and need to check it out?
He can really throw the ball, and he can throw the ball very accurately downfield and put it in tight windows. He has certainly elevated Cal, and so has the ACC in some regard. Cal doesn't play Georgia Tech, Clemson, Miami, or Florida State. So, they are going to be favored or a slight underdog in every game they play the rest of the season. They have a real chance to win 8 or 9 games, I think. He is very good. They're always well coached on defense. He gives them a dimension they haven't had. Cal was on him early. He's a Hawaiian kid. Cal was on him early, got him committed last summer, and then last minute Oregon comes in with a great offer. He signs with Oregon. He joins the program, practices with the Ducks during their Rose Bowl prep, realizes the vibe was not right, and then he transfers to Cal and is enrolled and in school by January 3rd. Only something that could happen in this day and age, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of talk about, he's only going to be at Cal for this season, and then he's going to go where the grass is greener and the dollars are bigger. He's already done that. He went to Oregon, realized, you know what? I want to be where I feel comfortable with the school that has recruited me the longest, the place where I have the best relationships. So I'm not sure that he's a short timer in Berkeley because he's already done the grass is greener thing and realized that wasn't right for him. But certainly for the next 9 games, he's fun to watch, and he makes Cal a threat. I don't know if they're a threat to win the ACC, but they're certainly a threat to be one of those teams that kind of comes out of nowhere and spends most of the season in the top 25.
Yeah, I think that they've got a chance to take a chunk out of a couple good teams and put them in a must-win position, especially if you are, like you said, they don't play any of the big boys.
They don't play the big boys.
They don't play the big boys, but those ones that are trying to like sneak up there that might feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
They could do that. USC, what have you seen that makes you think that Lincoln Riley has finally pulled the car onto the highway?
Nothing. I mean, they have looked good against 3 bad teams. I don't see how beating Purdue by, 16, 17 points. That doesn't do anything for me. I want to see USC consistently make the plays in the fourth quarter against good teams that they need to make. I want to see USC run the ball for first downs on 3rd and 3. I want to see USC tackle properly, avoid dumb penalties on defense. There's a lot out there that they got to prove to me before I think that they're going to be a real contender in the Big Ten. I think that they actually, Michigan State's going to give them a game. I think, it's not just a homecoming for Jonathan Smith, who's from Pasadena. Aiden Childs grew up in Long Beach and was not recruited by USC. And I think he is a very talented quarterback. I think Michigan State's going to go in there and give him a very good game, and we'll see how the Trojans react in the fourth quarter.
John Wilner Hotline. John, enjoy the games this weekend.
Same to you guys. Thanks for having me.